Chapter 8, 304. I woke up a week later. Eve was sent to get me from Territory 2 and take me back home. A feeling of despair filled my thoughts as the realization set in. We're not going against a guy just watching. We're against the god of this world. As long as we're playing the game, we're at his command. I said nothing to Eve as we walked back to the house. The week out helped my wounds heal. At least it's not all bad. I need to just keep telling myself that. Maybe it'll come true. I feel defeated. He holds my life in the palm of his hand, but it just doesn't make sense. How can I be in two places at once? He was clearly next to me when he choked me, but I'm here? He really is a game maker, isn't he? "Don't look so glum, John," Eve hummed, despite the sour situation. I said nothing, only gave her a tired look. "I mean, yeah, he has control of your body, and yeah, there are two of us, but hey, you're living now, aren't you? And you gave us a new idea of the game maker's powers here." Eve smiled, looking on the bright side of the black-painted situation. Powers? He's not a superhero either. Still, maybe she's right. He doesn't do anything without reason. I'm sure everyone here at one time or another cursed his name, so then why punish me? We reached the fence that was already turned off for our arrival. I slipped between the two fence posts, as Eve followed behind. I guess she was too tired to climb. We walked into the house where Hal and Alice were waiting for us at the kitchen table. Hal still hadn't put on a shirt, and Alice still held the same annoyed expression. I walked to the kitchen table, setting down the toys I had borrowed from Alice. Without a word, I stood, blank, bruised, and beaten. Hal was first to speak. "The game maker moved you up the list. You're now rank 9. What exactly did you do?" I only looked over to him, unable to explain. "I know," Alice hissed. "He killed someone. I watched it all on Eve's cameras." My eyebrows narrowed as I turned to the girl. I snarled slightly, as she knew that isn't what happened. Olive and Alex said that Ian had lived and asked for medical attention himself while I was out. "Oh, does blank have a bite?" "Well, go on," Alice sneered. "Alice, you blow everything out of proportion. John, why don't you tell us what happened?" Hal stated calmly. "I didn't kill anyone," I whispered. "Then?" Hal pressed for details. "I'm sure that video threw him for a loop. God knows it did to me. I was going into town to find food, and then I ran into this guy." "Alice," Hal growled, "we have plenty of food from the garden in the back." "Not my fault he believed me," Alice laughed. That brat. I could have died because she wanted to play a trick on me. I could feel the temperature of my body rise as my eye twitched slightly in anger. "You mean that I was stabbed, choked, and knocked out because you wanted to have some fun?" I gritted my teeth as I spoke. "I was bored," Alice smirked. "Bitch!" I screamed in anger. "Excuse me?" She stood from her seat, and we found ourselves in a staring contest. "I could have died." "How is that my fault?" She gestured with her hands to her face. "It is your fault. If you had told me there was plenty of food here, I wouldn't have run into Ian," I spat. The room became deathly quiet. That seemed to shut her up, whatever I said. Eve also seemed to have a loss for words. Hal narrowed his eyes on me. "You met Ian?" he snarled. "He's the reason I was in Territory 2 in the first place. I walked into the town, and well, I kind of snapped telling off the game maker, and that's when he just appeared behind me. We talked for a little bit. He asked me where I got all of Alice's things, and if I knew you, Hal. After that, he said he was going to use me to draw you out of hiding so that he could kill you. He attacked, and I fought back. Nothing more," I recalled. "So you killed him," Alice concluded falsely. "Are you insane?" "Oh, wait, you clearly are. You, the great engineer whose inventions nearly kill anyone who uses them. It's not like you care if they did. You're a heartless Hal cut me off. "That's enough, out of both of you." "No. Let him finish," Alice stated coldly. "Witch," I spat. "Coward," she replied. "Stop it, both of you." "Eve, help me out here," Hal called. Eve laughed playfully. "John and Alice sitting in a tree. Kissing. What? We both shouted in unison. First comes love, then comes sex, followed by deep emotional regret, she continued. Both of our mouths were wide and full of unspoken questions. We looked at each other, and both cringed at the thought. Now that you're both actually listening, we have our plan. How? Said Eve. The address of the building is 578 Arizonian Lane in the city. It's a warehouse, on the edge of our territory. We'll be going to search for the next step into discovering the clue set by him, Hal explained. So, Alice, John, and I will, Eve began. No, we're all going, Hal stated. Only one team can win. We are a team, and I'm getting really sick of hiding behind a cage. Shall we? Hal smiled. He stood from the kitchen table. He began to walk out of the home with Alice in total shock following behind him. What do you mean you're going? Alice snapped. Alice, don't baby me. I'm rank 1 for a reason. I can take care of myself, Hal smiled. But, she began. Eve came out of the home with her purple bag as well as many of the weapons I had taken with me. She handed the sword back to me and gave Hal the glove, along with 2 of the bombs. She then handed Alice 2 guns and smiled sweetly. She seemed so much like a puppy just waiting for Master's approval. Hal walked to the kitchen knob on the porch, turning off the blue of the fence. Eve once again climbed as Alice and I slipped past the 2 posts. Hal was the only one of us left. He stood as if he was unsure if he should leave. I wonder when the last time he left the house was. He quickly snapped from his daze before climbing over the fence with haste. Hal took the lead as Alice ran beside him in a protective manner. Eve and I followed behind. I looked over the pink-haired girl. Her hair gleamed in the sunlight. I noticed her tongue stuck out slightly of her mouth as she ran. Her eyes shot over towards me. She stuck her tongue out farther in a childish manner. A smile met my lips as I continued running. I lowered my jaw in a comical fashion. A small laugh escaped her lips. Alice shot daggers at us, causing our fun to stop. I looked back over at Eve, who had crossed her eyes and puffed out her cheeks. I couldn't help but laugh. Alice stopped us. Do you 2 think this is a game? Well, actually, yes, I replied, still laughing. This is a matter of life and death. Got it? I shut up. I'd rather not get into a fight with Miss Psycho right now. My reasoning is very simple. If we're attacked, she has the guns. We reached the warehouse. It was a large building, clearly abandoned, but not like everything else around here. Abandoned in the sense that it was meant to look worn down and empty. I looked around the streets. Clawden Road, Miller's Street, and Stone Road were all around us. My eyes gleamed over the metal door. It was like a door right before a boss battle. It was probably going to close right behind us until we defeat the objective. Hal walked up to the door and rattled the metal. Locked. Of course it is. How many games have you played where the door was just wide open? I pointed out. Games? Hal questioned. Like video games. That kind of game. I cleared up. You remember what kinds of games you played? Hal asked, seeming interested in what I was saying for once. Yeah, I think so. I can remember the game itself, but not me playing it, I answered. I guess you're not completely blank. Then again, none of us are completely empty. Alice remembers her engineering skills, Eve still knows how to hack, and I still know strategies. It's who we were, Hal clarified. I guess so. Anyway, he's playing a game, right? Well, in a game, the answers are always obvious at first. I scanned the warehouse for a clue on how to get in. The building was wooden, but looked sturdy enough not to just break down. A window, slightly broken, rested on the right side of the building, on the 2nd story. Eve, come here a minute. I called to the girl as I ran over to the side of the building. Eve did what she was told, and I motioned for her to get on my shoulders. The pink-haired girl nodded, and did just that. She's a lot lighter than I thought she would be. Alice and Hal joined us, as I moved against the barn side. Can you reach? I asked, pressing my face against the side. Just a little higher, Eve called. I felt her move her legs to the point that she was standing on my shoulders. I heard a click, and her weight slowly vanished from my body. I looked up to see that she was crawling into the unlocked window. What do you see? I called up to Eve. The place is pretty empty. Hey, I think I can unlock the door. The 3 of us walked back to the front and waited for Eve to unlock the metal door. Several slams and bangs could be heard from the other side. "Eve, is everything okay in there?" Hal asked. "It's fine. Just trying to break this stupid lock," Eve said, muffled through the door. With much effort from Eve, it finally gave. The door opened and Eve stood shining in sweat with a fire extinguisher in her hand. Several dents were across the metal bottom of the red cylinder. "Hey, come on in," she huffed, out of breath. I walked into the building with Alice and Hal following. The place was bare and filled with a thick layer of dust. I noticed the window was right above a platform that is normal for painting tall ceilings. Other than that platform, nothing seemed to be here. It was just empty. Hal took out a small notebook from the pocket in his jeans, as well as a pen. He began to note the scene, much like the cops would on TV. Eve and Alice just seemed to walk around aimlessly, to see if they could find anything of interest. Well, this is still a game, right? Every game makes it easy at first so that players won't just get too annoyed and give up. The game maker wants the players to keep playing, and he's willing to do anything in order to do that. "I'm gonna be right back," I said. I walked into the midday sun and looked up at the blue sky. I know he's looking at me. We're so close, and he knows it. I turned to the door without going in. The address number was written clearly on a plaque that hung slightly off. Something bothered me about this. It wasn't so much that the plaque was crooked, but rather that it had 3 numbers. Most buildings have 4, unless they are a part of a larger building complex, like apartments. This is no apartment, so why only 3? I walked closer to the metal, rubbing my thumb up against the numbers. I traced their pattern and mastered their shape. A dent came right after the 5, but other than that, it was clear and free of mark despite this being such an old building. I walked back into the empty barn with an idea. "Hey, Hal, can I see that notebook for a second?" I asked. Hal nodded, handing over the paper and pen. I opened the booklet to an empty page. This seemed to bother Hal, but I continued anyway. I wrote quickly, hoping that my idea was correct. 9 times 5.78 to the second power equals 304. "Is that the address?" Eve questioned, looking over my shoulder at the math. "Yeah, but I don't know what this has to do with anything," I added. "We had a 3-digit number. Now we have a new one." Hal's voice seemed curious. "Eve, try putting this number into the last power box code, the one where you found John," Hal commanded. Eve saluted, sitting on the dusty concrete floor, pulling out her laptop. "Hey, Eve. Question. Why do you guys search for new power boxes?" I realized I never asked. "They let us hack into the game's server temporarily, letting us use cameras that the game maker has installed around this world. It's kind of a way to spy on others," Eve explained. She typed hastily into her computer. An error code filled her screen. "Nope," she concluded with a pout. "Any other ideas?" Eve asked me. "Why me?" "You got us this far," Alice added, without almost any sarcasm. I gulped. The clue is in plain sight. Try seeing if anywhere on the floor creaks or if something on the wall moves." The 3 nodded, following my instructions. I gave Hal his notepad back and helped search myself. "It has to be here somewhere. Where did you hide it?" "Hey guys, I think I found something," Eve hollered from across the room. A panel on the floor came up where she kneeled. I walked over to the girl and stared down at the floor. A blue latex glove rested against the cold, gray flooring. It had been clearly used, due to the stretches and the blood. Eve reached her hand into the small pit to grab the item. "Don't touch it!" Hal shouted. But it was too late. Eve took hold of the rubber, pulling it out for everyone to see. Hal yelped, grabbing his throat in a painful manner. Confusion and concern painted everyone's faces as his wails of pain echoed through the barn. Hal stumbled away from the pit before collapsing, unconscious. "Hal!" Alice yelled. She ran over to the boy. Eve threw the glove, wishing that she had listened to his warning. Did Hal know this was going to happen? All phones rang, breaking the cold silence. Eve and Alice checked their messages. I looked over Eve's shoulder to read the text. "Congratulations, players, on discovering this clue and discovering my identity. Looks like Player 1 had an accident. I assure you he is fine, and when he awakes, he'll be a new man. Or should I say old? Game Maker." Another message comes onto Eve's phone, but Alice's did not ring. Hacker, I've entrusted an object in the folds of this glove that I'm sure you will find very interesting. Game Maker. Eve moved carefully in reaching into the blue latex. Her hand shook as she touched the material. A card, much like a bank card, slid out of the rubber. Eve stared at the plastic card with interest. She quickly put it away, grabbing the glove and putting it in her laptop bag. We need to get Hal home. We can figure out what to do after that, Eve commanded, taking leadership. I walked over to Alice, helping her carry Hal, who lay limply and unresponsive against the cold earth. So this is a clue. How obvious could you be? 304. Upside down it spells how. I thought you'd be Mr. Game Maker. I hope you don't make it too easy.